Number 10. Batman almost marries a villain. Almost. So close. Almost. I'm not talking about Catwoman either, who admittedly is more anti-hero than anything if we really had to categorize her. Batman once almost became engaged to Jezebel Jet. She was a model who came from money and played a bit of cat and mouse with Bruce originally, not accepting his offer to take her out, remarking that she had really no interest in being another notch on his bedpost. However, the two would run into one another while skiing and decided to start seeing one another. Jezebel was almost deterred from continuing the relationship as Bruce seemed too distant and absent, but then she discovered that he was Batman. This actually strengthened their bond, and the two were even rumored to be engaged soon. That's how close they got. But it turned out that Jezebel had actually been working for the Black Glove all along, and actually sought to destroy Batman. Batman revealed in turn that he actually knew about this the whole time, and had actually been doubly playing her the whole time. But I'm kinda skeptical about that. If he knew, why not just defeat her? Why keep up the whole facade of like pretending to be in love with her? And why not just expose her? I guess he felt he kind of had to follow the breadcrumb trail, but still, you know, when you get buried and then you're like, yeah, me getting buried was part of it, that was part of the plan. I'm wondering, I'm curious. Number 9. Peter Parker gets fired. Spider-Man being Tony Stark's fanboy somewhat extends to the comics. We saw an example of this when Spider-Man decided to publicly reveal his secret identity in the first Civil War storyline, which he did in support of the Superhero Registration Act, and in hopes of inspiring other supers to get registered and become heroes working for the government, tossing in his mask, so to speak, with Tony's side of the war. However, this quickly turned out to be a bad move for Peter, as J. Jonah Jameson was none too happy to discover that this meant he had been employing and paying Spider-Man, who he viewed as his nemesis, this whole time. He ended up firing Peter Parker as a result of his unmasking. Not a good move. Lost his job. Mistakes were made. Number 8. Captain America and Wolverine let Deadpool's family die. Or at least appear dead. Look like they died. During the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly story arc in Volume 3 of Deadpool, Wade comes to Captain America and Wolverine trying to convince them to join him in going up against what he suspects is a villainous plot, targeting himself and members of the Super Soldier program, and a man he can't quite remember named Butler might be behind it. It turns out he's right, and his daughter and her mother have also gone missing. However, when he first contacts Steve and Logan, neither is convinced that Deadpool is really onto something, and they both just dismiss it as standard Wade craziness and paranoia. This turns out to be wrong though, and their delay to join the cause means all 3 of the heroes end up getting kidnapped and end up arriving too late to save Deadpool's family. Sad face. Or so it seems, or so it seems. Number 7. Ultimate Tony Stark makes a sex tape. In the Ultimate world, Tony made the mistake of trusting and falling in love with Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff. Fortunately, he had a contingency plan put in place to put a stop to her just in case, seizing control of the nanites in her bloodstream, which allowed her to control her own Iron Man suit and using them to knock her out with enough time to apprehend her. Still, trusting her ended up being a pretty huge mistake, as it ended up causing the death of Jarvis, whom Tony was not fast enough to save. Natasha had revealed she was still a spy and a villain and had never actually been a true hero. And although Hawkeye ended up killing her for her misdeeds, the sex tape that she and Tony had made together before this all happened would come back to bite him in the butt, as most sex tapes do to most people. Well, maybe except for Kim Kardashian. She put a more positive spin on her sex tape. Number 6. Deadpool kills Agent Coulson. Deadpool is a hero who makes a lot of mistakes. Part of this boils down to being an anti-hero with a misguided moral compass, or really just a lack of moral compass entirely. He really wants to be good, but he just doesn't know how, so sometimes he relies on role models to help guide him. In this particular case, the role model he trusted was Captain America, and of course that is where it all went wrong for him. Captain America is usually pretty trustworthy, of course, so you might be wondering why Steve would possibly lead Deadpool astray. Well, during the events surrounding Secret Empire, Captain America's whole existence was kind of retconned, and it was revealed that he was actually a longtime sleeper agent for Hydra. Cap gave Deadpool a mission to kill Agent Coulson, and wanting to trust his idol, Wade accepted the mission without question. Tragically, this ended with Deadpool killing Agent Phil Coulson before Coulson could get the word out that Cap was up to something bad. Even more tragic, Deadpool was never given an explanation by the villainous Captain America as to why he had to kill Coulson. So he did it and then was just like, why did I have to do? Okay, I guess it was probably fine. Number 5. Spider-Man causes the death of Gwen Stacy. One of Spider-Man's saddest moments in the comics is likely when he caused the death of Gwen Stacy. During a battle with Green Goblin, Gwen is dropped onto the top of a bridge support and then subsequently knocked off of that. Spider-Man uses his webs to grab her leg before she can fall into the water, congratulating himself for saving his one true love as he pulls her up to safety. Unfortunately, his quick thinking wasn't enough to save Gwen. In fact, it looks as though in the panel that he may have actually caused her demise instead. The panel in which he catches her has in it two very important sound effects. So one of them is the swick of Spidey catching her with his web, and the other is the snap of what appears to be Gwen Stacy's neck snapping. Needless to say, Spider-Man quickly rescinded his congratulatory remarks and even went so far as to blame himself for her death. But was it his fault? Was she dead when she already landed? So many questions. Number 4. Batman kills Silver St. Cloud. For a guy who prides himself on thinking of all the possibilities, Batman still seems to make a good amount of mistakes. One such mistake is when he trusted Baphomet, a vigilante who cropped up and whom Batman decided to ally himself with. It turned out that mysterious Baphomet, who Batman thought he knew so much about, was actually the even more mysterious Batman villain, Onomatopoeia, a villain who we never really get to see enough of in my opinion. Proving just how deadly he can be, Onomatopoeia revealed himself at a time where Batman had re-fallen in love with Silver St. Cloud, a former flame of his, since rekindled. In fact, the two had become engaged and were preparing to get married, and seemed pretty perfect together. While in the Batcave, Batman had his back turned, and that one moment of dropping his guard led to Onomatopoeia's reveal as he killed Silver, slashing her neck open with a man. This is why Batman doesn't trust people. That's why he has so many issues. Number 3. Deadpool kills his parents. Granted, this isn't really Deadpool's fault, as he was kind of brainwashed somewhat and manipulated into this one. Anyways, Butler sent him on a mission to assassinate a target, and Deadpool enthusiastically took the job. Despite having weird feelings when arriving to the home, and even having Sabretooth, who was actually in on the plot, still suggest that maybe it was a job Deadpool didn't necessarily have to do. But Deadpool was committed. After a fight with Alpha Flight, Deadpool returned home later in the evening. He recognized a room and the items in it, likely because these were his parents and that was his bedroom. But despite the weird feelings that he couldn't quite shake, he didn't remember his childhood home and his parents enough to bow out. He set the home ablaze while his parents slumbered peacefully upstairs, committing what he had set out to do and ultimately unintentionally killing his parents. Number 2. Kyle Rayner lets Alexandra DeWitt literally get fridged. Kyle Rayner was once a struggling graphic designer who ended up acquiring a Green Lantern ring by happenstance. It wasn't revealed to him at the time exactly why he'd been chosen. Regardless, Kyle chose to embrace his new role as hero and ran home to show his ex-girlfriend Alexandra, who he was living with at the time. Alexandra supported him, even encouraging him to redesign his costume after people mistook him for Hal Jordan, who had recently been known as Parallax and wasn't really in the people's good books at the time. She ended up being a huge help to him at a time where he was really struggling, and the two actually ended up resuming their romance because of all of this and getting back together. But Kyle failed Alex when she needed him most, and the villain Major Force ended up killing her while Kyle was away, stuffing her corpse in their apartment's fridge and leaving it for Kyle to find. And that's where the term fridging comes from when we're talking about that in comics, which refers to when women are mistreated in stories and misused, like how Alexandra was then kind of reduced to just being a symbol for revenge to Kyle. When women are just like little plot points as opposed to characters. You know what I mean? I don't blame you, I blame writers, but it's fine. Number 1. The Illuminati almost destroyed themselves and the world. The Illuminati is an organization that was intended to be a kind of secret superhero government. However, most of the members refused this course of action, and instead they just became a powerful group of heroes who share information in an attempt to combat global threats. They just basically hang out in the dark a lot. This group consists of Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange, Professor X, Black Bolt, and Namor. But for a group of heroes trying to make all the right calls for the world, they certainly make a lot of wrong ones. It's probably why Black Panther did not want to be a part of this team. One of the worst was when they elected to send Hulk off planet in order to protect the Earth, a controversial decision that ended up blowing up in their faces when Hulk returned, stronger than ever and pretty pissed at them, as Namor had predicted would happen. Namor actually didn't agree with the decision to banish Bruce from Earth. But Hulk was not so much angry at them for being banished, but more so for killing his wife. He blamed them for the death of Kyra, his wife, queen, and soon-to-be baby mama, because the ship he had traveled to the planet of Sakaar in had exploded, killing many, including her, and effectively kind of destroying the planet's surface itself. In the end, the Illuminati were not behind this destruction, but I think it is fair to blame them for basically causing World War Hulk with their bad decision making.
Kicking off the list at number 10, firing Robin. This is a war, Dick. Robin is my second, my lieutenant. Anything less than total devotion to the cause is simply wasting my time. I'll say it again, you're fired, Dick. Get out of my cave.
Fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Robin, Dick Grayson came back as Nightwing in 1984 after he was fired from the role of Robin. Neat. So Batman had ultimately decided he wasn't fitting for the role. So in Nightwing Year 1, Part 1 of 6, we see this unfold in a rather dramatic way. And as the issue says, one door closes and another one opens. Did Batman go too far? I mean, just take away his phone or something, ground him. Nobody likes getting fired. Number 9, addressing the Mandarin. Okay guys, off the bat, I'm gonna say it. Never give out personal information, whether it's online or in person. Just don't do it, doesn't matter. The amount of times my aunts almost get scammed by these fake emails, it's wild. So when it comes to super terrorists, never give away your address to those. That's definitely the top of the list on who to not give your info away to. So in Iron Man 3, we see Tony Stark and he's a little upset. I mean, the Mandarin attacks are responsible for somebody close to him getting hurt, and that somebody being Happy Hogan, who is not so happy at the moment. So Tony Stark decides he's got a few choice words for the man responsible. And in his message to the Mandarin after visiting Happy in the hospital, Tony states how he's not afraid of the Mandarin and he in fact should just die. There's like news crews, people are on their phones, people are shouting World Star and stuff. Like, Tony, I get you're upset, but come on man, this is going on Reddit, probably. So of course he gets attacked by the Mandarin at his house because, well yeah, what did you expect, my dude? And out of all the suits Tony has access to, I mean the Avengers 1 suit, that's amazing. The suitcase suit, which is still a better choice than the Mark 42. No, this guy gears up with a prototype suit and he gets wrecked. That attack sets up the entire film. Could have easily been avoided if you just didn't give your address out in the first place. Tony stank. Number 8, I am Spider-Man. Super identities are meant to be secret identities. So if you stuck around until the very end of Spider-Man Far From Home, which you better have if you're watching this video, you were treated to a pretty sweet teaser for Peter's upcoming conflicts. We see J.K. Simmons reprise his role of J. Jonah Jameson as his face is front and center on a news billboard downtown in New York. Now, of course, we were happy to see him back in the Spider-Man universe, but he comes bearing bad news. He ends up showing leaked footage from the final battle with Mysterio, and in the footage we see him shout out Spider-Man by his secret identity. And a nice little photo op to go along with it. Now, this isn't the first time Peter's identity has been revealed to the world. In fact, in the Civil War comics storyline, he actually comes out and says it himself. You know, just support the Superhero Registration Act, all that jazz. Okay, fair. I guess that's fair. What's the worst that could happen, anywho? That's inspiring, kind of. I mean, this wasn't the best plan. I mean, now J. Jonah Jameson knows he's been paying Spider-Man, and then what comes next shouldn't surprise anyone.
You're fired.
Number 7. You shouldn't have gone for the head. Avengers Infinity War was 2.5 hours of Thanos just walking through the universe, just taking these Infinity Stones like nobody's business. There's a big climactic battle on Titan, Thanos' home world. And we have most of the Guardians. We have Spider-Man, Stark, and Doctor Strange. Quite the team. Quite the team. So this big plan unfolds and they finally have him. They have the Mad Titan in the perfect spot. He's all stretched out, ready to go. The gauntlet's sliding off. It's literally, it's coming off. And then in comes Quill, all upset because the love of his life got tossed off a cliff. Oh, we get it, jeez, come on. You're upset and that's fair, but you clearly know what this dude is able to do. He made your blaster turn into little bubbles, man. This is beyond you. Chris Pratt's acting in this scene is amazing, but this one moment just stuck in our heads on loop for that entire year we had to wait until Endgame. Just wondering what could have been. Instead, we got to rewatch the Avengers get dusted, all because Star-Lord, with the duster, got a little heated. I mean, Spider-Man, would it hurt to, like, I don't know, assess the situation and maybe just shoot one web? Like, you have the aim, we know this. Number 6, Stark and Romanoff hitting it off. So in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, they get a little close, the two of them, right? Closer than the MCU relationship, that's for sure. So Ultimates issue 3 opens with this beautiful shot. And the shot is all of the Ultimates just hanging out in Tony's mansion. And then in the background there's like a sex tape. That's a, you know, usually I put on Spotify, but that's fine too, I guess. That sex tape being Iron Man and Black Widow. So why? What's the deal here? Well, In the Ultimates 2, her and Iron Man dated and then of course got engaged. But it's all a lie. It's a lie. All a lie. She was trying to destroy the Avengers for the fall of the Soviet Union. That is until she's killed by Hawkeye. Jeez, imagine if this is how she went out in Endgame. That scene with her and Hawkeye could have been a little bit different. So after she's dead, the tape gets released. People are selling DVDs on the streets of like this whole thing, and it's just, you know, gross. People are selling DVDs of this on the streets of New York. It's wild. Come on, Stark. She's the best spy ever. You're the smartest guy ever. Figure it out. Number 4, literally anything with Lois Lane. Okay, Superman may be handsome in any version of him, but what's the deal, Lois Lane? Why do you want to date this guy so badly? Aren't you tired of the constant peril you're being put into? I mean, the dude has hurt her physically and mentally like numerous times. He left her in Superman Returns, which, okay, relationships have their problems. Sometimes you need a little space to figure it out. Okay, we've all watched Maury. Oh, she was pregnant. Awesome, sick, dude, great role model. Maybe you should just find somebody from another universe, you know? Like date somebody who doesn't have to worry about bills. I mean, stop making her life so hard. She's got enough on her plate at work as it is. He also used a fat ray on her and then made fun of her. Fat ray gun. Yeah, we'll never forget. Number 3, Flashpoint. Okay, so in August 2011, fans were treated to the work of Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert in a story that is now being turned into a major motion picture that we're all super excited for. And it's set to release sometime in the next few years. But what is Flashpoint? Why is it a big deal? Well, when Barry Allen decided to use his super speed to change history and save his mother, he accidentally entered a dark alternate future. One where Bruce Wayne never became Batman, but rather he was the one killed that fateful night. And then Wonder Woman's out here just cutting off heads and taking names. Like literally, she's legally taking names with the whole Aquaman wedding of war thing. And Superman's being held captive like a lab rat by the government. It's just all bad. And as soon as he arrives in this dystopian timeline, he can no longer even use the Speed Force. Ugh. So he meets up with a much different Batman and attempts to recreate the same accident that gave him his powers in the first place, almost dying during the failed attempt. Any plot with altered timelines makes me so stressed out. Like Santa Claus 3, when Jack Frost became Santa instead, and then everybody just sucks all of a sudden. It's like, can we go back please? This is depressing. Number 2, Batman's love life. Okay, you're rich, you're good looking, you can fight anybody, you got all the gadgets and gizmos, yet you still suck at picking girls, Bruce, come on. So in Batman Son of the Demon, Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, is like, you know what? You should totally date my daughter. Yeah, no, you guys would hit it off, definitely. Bruce, you're a Pisces. It just makes sense, do it. So the two decide to go at it, and then of course, a baby comes along. A baby. That baby being Damian, which is just the start of a very stressful path. I mean, the poor kid grows up with parents who have very different goals and aspirations when it comes to living life. Like some days they're mortal enemies, some days they're not. That's what you need. You know what? You need Tinder, Batman. That's why you need Tinder. They do the filtering for you. Just type in your preferences, you know. Must love parents. Boom. Must love hang gliding. Boom. Must be super into roleplay. Like, super into roleplay. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Mad Scientist. Ultron can't see the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that? That line is said by Wanda Maximoff in Avengers Age of Ultron. This movie was a lesson in what not to do with multi-million dollars of high tech and space stones we don't really understand yet. So Tony has created some amazing stuff. I mean, all of his suits, his innovative tech, barf, like that's awesome, there we go. He's a genius and he has the ability to eliminate so many phone bills around the world. But what if he created a supervillain, you know, just for fun? You know, just for backup. We find Tony and Bruce, that's right Banner, you're in this shit too, working on Ultron, or just the idea of it rather. See, Tony had this thought since Avengers 1 that he could create a suit of armor around the world. A robot that essentially kicks ass. Something that takes care of threats while the Avengers soak up the sun or learn how to make paprikash. Now of course, one of the main elements helping them achieve this goal is the return of Loki's scepter. They think by studying the central power unit of the scepter, which ends up being the Mind Stone, they can finally solve the puzzle. What does it look like it's doing? Tony asks. Like it's thinking, says Banner. Okay, pause. Like it's thinking. We all just said that. The smartest guy on Earth just said that. Okay, that's fishy. Better at least run this idea by Thor. No? We're just gonna do it anyways? Alright, we'll wing it. Feels like he would just caution against this. Like I feel like it would have just not happened. Thor would have been like, yeah, no, don't. You don't want any part of that shit. Tony ends up accidentally infusing consciousness from the Mind Stone into an evil, jealous killer robot that actually mirrors a lot of Tony's past. So Ultron immediately starts to learn about what he is and who the Avengers are, and he's not a fan. It doesn't take long to come to the conclusion that the Avengers just suck. By the end of the movie, we have a horribly damaged Sokovia with roughly 177 deaths and a massive new hole. This is big foundation for the world's largest in-ground pool. There you go. We love billionaires. But one of those deaths ended up being Charles Spencer, a young American engineer bystander who was killed in the battle. Charles' mother ends up confronting Stark in Captain America Civil War, and then that leads to even more bad choices by Tony. Your curiosity literally killed the cat. I mean, probably. There's probably a lot of cats in Sokovia. Everybody has cats. Kicking off the list at number 10, Souvenir Symbiote. So during the events of 1984's Secret Wars, Spidey came across a symbiote while on Battleworld. In issue 7, Spider-Woman makes her grand entrance, and Peter Parker reacts in his usual manner. I mean, one of his first thoughts is to sue her for infringing on his shtick, but he clocks that she just tossed a boulder as easily as he could, so maybe there's more behind her than meets the eye. In the next issue, he gets an up-close personal look at this new black suit Spider-Woman was rocking. And now we have a new costume for Spidey. And he loves it. He feels stronger, he feels quicker, and he's even impressed by the mechanics of the suit's ability to change. So while it all seemed like the perfect aid in this massive battle, Peter questioned why his new suit was so different after all. Oh well, he says, and then he returns to Earth with his new suit that just happens to activate his Spidey sense. And we all know that there was much more to this suit than we thought. You gotta leave things where you find them, Pete. You never know, they might just be, I don't know, an alien race. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a like on this video because it helps the channel out a lot over here. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now back to some more Spider-Man mistakes. Number 7, homesick. So now is a time more than ever when we have to be careful about spreading any virus, right? So you would think when Peter gets bitten during, say, I don't know, a zombie apocalypse, he would stay as far away from his loved ones as possible. In Marvel's Zombies Army of Darkness, we see our heroes run into Ash Williams, traveler between worlds. And he's arrived with the Necronomicon warning him that the army of the dead will rise in this world. So Peter sees this firsthand beside Ash, and he decides he's not going to let any more innocents die on his watch. And then in the next issue, after being bit himself, Peter pretends to munch on Hawkeye's brains before making a daring escape. Not a bad idea. So he gets Ash to safety, explaining why he's still a human being. And then Spidey decided to go home and make sure that May and MJ were okay with this bite and first-hand experience as to what happens. And Peter's newfound appetite starts to kick in. You should have stayed away, Peter. This went from bad to worse real quick. Number 6, not worth the fight. So we have Peter Parker, but this time from Earth 982, aka the MC2 universe, which is my personal favorite. Wonder why. So after a battle with the Green Goblin, Peter ends up losing his entire left leg. And at the start of this issue, he reflects on how much he loved his newborn daughter, saying he wanted to spend every waking moment with her and MJ. But he had other responsibilities. At least he thought he did. His words, not mine. So when May was 2 years old, he got into a fight with the Green Goblin and ended up losing a leg because of it, ending his days as the web slinger. Now it's great in one way because we get to see May Parker rise to the occasion and put on the suit herself, and she's totally badass while she does it. But to think how differently their lives would have been had Peter have just retired and, I don't know, focused on his family, it would have been a lot different. So while Peter is walking around with a fake leg and cane, she's swinging around busting arms dealers. Let's just hope she comes across a, I don't know, leg dealer. Number 5, too much fun. I mean, sure, saving people can be a blast, swinging through the air, doing flips, talking the entire time to bad guys, but when you find yourself totally comfortable in any job, that's when mistakes happen, when you're not paying full attention. And we see this unfold in a brutal way in Spider-Man issue 17, titled At the Hands of Thanos. So he's going over the mental checklist of things to do in his Spider-Man day, like pick up Mary Jane, and no, not that kind. Fill up on web fluid, you know, usual Spidey stuff. When suddenly a couple workers fall off the side of a building, Peter even acknowledges that this is just another walk in the park for him. He saves them, but the cooling machine falls and then explodes, sending Spider-Man hurling in the air, killing Peter Parker. Now, believe me, that sounds terrible and all, but it gets worse. Yeah. Death isn't the end, and especially in the world where Thanos is around. He meets Peter in the afterlife and makes him watch as a mother yells in agony over the loss of her child during that same explosion. So not only did Spider-Man get himself killed trying to save the woman and her daughter, but he didn't even save the kid. I mean, maybe if you weren't so focused on the barbecue sauce, things would have turned out differently. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know. Number 4, a helping hand. It's always fun giving one of your favorite teachers help during a project. I mean, giving them a hand though, literally, could end up pretty bad. So in the comics, Dr. Curt Connors lost his arm due to an explosion during a war and started to spend his life researching on new ways to grow it back. So once this finally happened, there were a few side effects. And as we see in the Amazing Spider-Man movie, Dr. Curtis Connors becomes a lizard man. And no, not like a lizard man. He becomes a lizard man. Like he's a giant lizard. Sorry, what happened? I mean, sure, lizards can grow back their tails easily, but when you add that in with a human driven by rage, the brain can alter as well. So his story arc begins with the Amazing Spider-Man 6, if you want to see that nightmare take place. Number 3, silence is golden. How many girls does Spider-Man have in these comics? Well, that's a tricky question, because Spider-Man and Peter Parker are different people. They're perceived differently by others, specifically Black Cat. Black Cat, being a known burglar, is met by Spider-Man in the night, and she knows he's attracted to her, and she digs the webhead as well. I mean, look at him, who doesn't? All that confidence, all that lankiness, you gotta. In Amazing Spider-Man issue 194, we see the two of them get pretty flirty and even exchange a kiss. But when Black Cat finds out who Spider-Man really is, she's actually less interested. Come on, Pete, you gotta play it cool. Be that mysterious guy. Number 2, the spider or the man. We now go to Amazing Spider-Man issue 100 back in 1963. The issue begins with Peter Parker wanting to dismiss his abilities. I mean, I'll take them off your hands gladly if you wanna just, toss those to the side, sure. So he thinks it's a great idea to drink the solution that he's had that would get rid of his superpowers. Just in case he wanted to, I don't know, get rid of superpowers for some reason. For Gwen, he says, before downing the mix. And as you could have guessed, it doesn't work at all. Well, kind of. I mean, he grows 4 extra arms, so, take that what you will. Not like this, he says. Oh yeah, homemade vaccine for the win. And finally, number 1, not my problem. In a list full of mistakes, I think it's only fair to end on the mistake that haunts Peter the most. After letting a thug out of his sights, that thug ended up being the one to take his Uncle Ben's life. So not only did Peter, of course, feel saddened by this tremendous loss, especially not having parents in the first place, but he was responsible for letting this thug get away, and he honestly just let it happen. And it all takes place in Amazing Fantasy issue 15. Oh yeah, we see this mess go down right here. So after a police officer asks Spider-Man why he let the crook get in an elevator and make a break for it, Spider-Man responds in a sassy way with, "Sorry pal, that's your job. I'm through being pushed around by anyone. From now on, I just look out for number 1. That means me." Sounds like a great plan, Pete. So how did that end up again? Number 10, early killing. Okay, the Batman we all know is a lot different from the Batman that first came to light back in the day. For starters, the no killing rule wasn't there all the time. In the first few issues, Batman was throwing hands and smacking people with chairs, and of course, saving the day. But in Batman issue 1, only 19 pages later, he's hanging a guy from a bat plane. And in issue 27, he pushes a guy into acid. Like acid. And then in issue 29, he burns Dr. Death to death. Now at the time, this was how Batman got the job done, but looking back now with the new Batman that, respects humans, seems totally off. Don't worry though, he makes quite a few mistakes in the recent comics too, and I'll be breaking down more of those very soon. But before we go to number 9, if you guys could please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up because it really does help out the channel a lot. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to some more Batman mistakes. Number 9, breaking the Penguin. Batman is a great detective and an equally skilled fighter, so watching his parents die at a young age showed him just how much damage one man can cause. So you would think being covered in armor, being absolutely ripped, and being a skilled fighter, you would have some sort of an idea of the damage that you're doing. But if it's personal, that judgment might just be clouded. So in the Batman The Dark Knight issue 2, we see Batman straight up torture the Penguin. I mean, he breaks him one bone at a time. And he does this to get info on the whereabouts of Dawn Golden. So he tells Penguin to talk, like maybe once or twice, before he just starts breaking his bones. Thankfully, and this is weird saying, but thankfully Killer Croc showed up. He came in to stop the detective from doing his business. I mean, thank God, or else who knows how far he would have gone. Bruce was well on his way to breaking more than just his bones. He was about to break his only rule. And that rule was the one we just talked about. Number 8, Silver St. Cloud. Batman often has the best intentions. I mean, maybe he's pieced together this puzzle and he's super close to figuring it out, so he'll often just do stuff without consulting the team or asking questions, because that's what detectives do. They keep their planning inside here. You got the element of surprise. Makes sense. So the surprise to Silver St. Cloud when Batman started attacking her and ripping out her hair, I can only imagine how shocking that must have been. And it all takes place in Batman the Widening Gyre miniseries, when Bruce and Silver St. Cloud are seemingly really happy together. I mean, they're great. They're doing yoga on the beach, they're hanging out, and then he would go back and fight crime. He really was working hard and playing hard as well. So Aquaman rolls up to Bruce and he's shocked that 1, he's swimming, and 2, that he's swimming without a costume, like he's not doing a mission or anything. He's just in the water for fun. And then Selina Kyle, of course, gets in Bruce's head once she hears about Bruce's lover, saying how she knows the real him and that she says she's willing to do what it takes to be with him, even digging up an old cape to fit the pitch, seeing as he likes capes and all. Then they both kiss, right in the middle of Selina asking Bruce if he's in love. I mean, that's already a mistake right there, but there's some more stuff in this as a whole. Then in the last issue, Bruce pulls out a ring for Silver St. Cloud, and she's pumped. She even fills Alfred in on why she calls Batman DD, which is too much information, by the way. It's like she was made for me, says Bruce, or made for me. Then in the next page, he cuts off Alfred and Silver in traffic and proceeds to attack her, like pulling her hair, telling her to shut up, just beating her up. It's horrible. And then he pulls out a handy tool that confirms that she is indeed a human being. Instead of just pulling that tool out at the start, he does it after he pulls her hair and beats her up. I mean, you could have just asked Bruce. She was clearly quite open with the relationship, so maybe next time, just ask a few questions. Dee Dee. Number 6, ignoring Blue Beetle. So back in Countdown to Infinite Crisis, Blue Beetle had actually approached his super friends and teammates after he discovered something called the OMAC project. So he brought it to Batman's attention, but Bruce just doesn't give a damn. He brushes him off almost immediately. Okay, cool. Well, the OMAC project, of course, turned out to be something big and bad, and when Blue Beetle discovered it, he's all by himself, leading him to be killed. If only Batman just took him seriously in this moment, things would have turned out a lot less ugly. Also, I know Batman created this thing in the first place, so it's kind of fair that he didn't listen to him. But before Infinite Crisis, the OMACs killed like a lot of people. You should have just given him at least 2 minutes to explain. Just, fine, what is it? Okay, I'll actually check that out. That sounds concerning, thank you. That easy. Number 5, passing the baton. Usually when you retire or quit, you're replaced with somebody who knows the job quite well. Somebody who's been with you along the journey that you will trust continues your legacy. Maybe like, I don't know, a sidekick? So after the Nightfall storyline when Batman got wrecked by Bane, he decided to pass on the Batman mantle to not Dick Grayson. No, instead he chose Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael. His run on Batman wasn't the same as Bruce. I mean, for starters, Azrael's methods were violent and irresponsible, which is pretty much the opposite of what we're going for here. He was, however, capable of defeating Bane with his new suit, so we'll give him that. But this guy thought that made him an all-around better Batman and a permanent successor. So once Bruce recovered, he had to force Azrael to leave the position. So then ashamed Jean-Paul Valley returned to his Azrael days. Like imagine getting caught for a petty crime on one of those nights Azrael was patrolling. You think you were caught by Batman and you're like, oh, thank God. Wait, who's this guy? And then you just get your ass kicked. No way. Number 4, he trusted Selina Kyle. When The Dark Knight Rises hit the big screen in 2012, fans were excited to see the new additions to the team, like Tom Hardy as Bane or Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle, but some fans weren't too pleased with the choices that Bruce Wayne made in this movie. I mean, the world's greatest detective was betrayed by Selina Kyle more than once in just one movie. I mean, for starters, she led him into the hardest fight he's ever had to face, one that ended with his back breaking.
Oh, your money!
But after that, when he returned to Gotham, he trusts her again, this time with his tech. Tech that she used to break Batman's only rule, by killing Bane. She ends it with the bat bike, bam, right then and there. And she even explains how she's not a big fan of this rule.
About the whole no guns thing. I'm not sure I feel as strongly about it as you do.
I mean, sure, it had to be done, but if you were gonna be okay with killing someone like Bane eventually, you could have solved this problem a long time ago. Number 3, Stephanie Brown. So when Tim's father found out about his part-time job as Robin, he was forced to retire. So Stephanie went to surprise Tim at school to see this other female classmate was putting the moves on Tim. And she wasn't too pleased about that, so she broke it off with Tim, thinking that he'd been sneaking around behind her back. So she needed something else to focus on now, so she made this homemade Robin suit and snuck into the Batcave and demanded that Batman would make her the new Robin and train her. So Batman's like, Okay, sure. Cut to several months of training, and he gave her a costume similar to Tim's, so she rolled with him and the two actually did quite well together. Good call, Bruce. Then she disobeyed orders on a couple of missions and was promptly fired. No suit for you, give me that back. Now, this is where Batman goofs up. Because of this, Stephanie felt like she had to prove Batman, right? Which is an obvious first thing to do. You get fired, you're like, oh, come on, I can do this, let's go. So she took one of his plans for the Gotham's underworld and tried to step up. Now, this unfortunately led to the events of Batman War Games, where Stephanie was captured by Black Mask, tortured, and then sadly died in a hospital with a failed Bruce Wayne by her side. Leslie Tompkins came in the picture too, and she sure didn't help. It was actually revealed that she had withheld the medical treatment that could have saved Stephanie in an attempt to make Bruce see the violence that he's caused and hang up the mantle. He didn't see it. He kept going. He was like, yeah, another Robin, another day, let's go. And finally, number 1. Jason Todd. He was the child of Willis and Catherine Todd, and post-crisis, Jason is known as impulsive, reckless, and full of rage. So Batman saw this and wanted him to channel that energy and be something better by becoming Robin. So we saw him stealing tires off the Batmobile and figured he was just this angry kid. Smart, yet angry. So Batman tried putting him in boarding school, but the school was actually a training ground for young criminals. And I didn't go to that school, are you kidding me? So it looks like Robin it is. So Batman asked Barbara Gordon to come out of retirement to keep an eye on him during a couple of missions. But she even warns Bruce of this darkness inside of him. She could see it. This darkness drove Jason to find his real mother, who was being blackmailed by the Joker. And then the Joker ended up beating him to death. Batman arrives a little too late after a bomb had gone off and held the Boy Wonder's body in his hands. So afterwards, he comes back as Red Hood to find that he's been replaced after his death by Tim Drake. Batman considers this one of his greatest failures, not properly training Jason as Robin, and I agree, hence why we put it. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in with us today. Please drop a comment down below which other mistakes superheroes have made that we all love and love thinking about and going, ooh, I'm so happy that wasn't me. So with more movies on the way, I'm sure there's gonna be plenty more of these videos to go around. I'm Taylor McWaters, stay safe. We'll catch you next time.